Howdy, bench warmers. Welcome to the Seniors on JV podcast. I'm Kennedy Smith, here along with my co-host Jake Lanier.
Howdy, Aggies.
And also our color commentator and sports analysis guy in the back, Ryan Steer.
Howdy, everyone. How's it going?
Well, today we have the most special guest I think we'll ever have ever. Jimbo Fisher is in the office with us. How are you doing?
Howdy, how are y'all doing?
Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. I know that it's probably busy with spring ball going on. How's that going so far?
It's going well. It's going well. I wish we had about 3 more weeks. It's coming to the last week. You always wish when you start to get right to where you're really starting to develop and get things done, you wish you had a couple more weeks to get it on. But it's going well. Kids are working hard, and we're getting better.
Right. Well, this Saturday you've got the spring game coming
Yes.
up. What can we expect as fans to see out of this team?
I hope great competitiveness. I really do. I think hopefully a lot of toughness, competitiveness, and guys battling for positions. I mean, this is an open time. This is the fun time where you find out about guys and who deals with, you see some of the pressure. You got a guy you're battling for a job and you want it and putting things in perspective. But hopefully a team that'll be disciplined, that'll be well coached, that'll play the game the right way, but also compete the right way too.
Right.
Yeah, Coach, are the quarterbacks in the spring game going to be going full contact or?
No, we don't ever have them go live. Used to be, now years ago, that's what we were talking about. They used to always be live, but no, they won't be hit to the ground. But if they get close, they get banged, and they get touched, then they'll be sacked, but they won't be hit to the ground.
I know specifically for fans out there, we're looking at the quarterbacks, we're looking at the middle linebackers, we're looking at specific positions, but what are you and the coaching staff specifically looking for?
Well, there's a lot to fix. Those are 2 high-profile positions in that regard, but at the same time, football is such a team game. We got the lines of scrimmage. First of all, to me, when I always look at things, I want to know my lines of scrimmage. Where are we at in the D-line situation? Where are we at in the O-line situation? And both, you always need more depth. There's never enough big guys. You can find medium guys. You can find small guys. It's hard to find great big guys consistently. And the O-line, we got some guys to replace, but some of those, we got some guys back. And now Bryce is not in spring because he's throwing in track and he's doing really well. He's had some great meets here lately, what I understand. And the chain's not. He's running too. But up front, that part of it, losing Bryce out there is really, it's a detriment for right now, but I think it's a really good thing because of the other guys are really having to develop and as starters knowing what's going to happen with Matt Wyckoff, who I think is getting better and better. Strickland is getting better and better. And those guys are getting a lot of quality reps against good people. And then, Layden on the one side is doing real well. Father's getting better. Trey Zune has really made a push. Moko and those guys are getting in there. We've had a few guys banged up. Trainer got nicked up, but hopefully he'll be back this week in practice and getting in the spring game. And Aki, unfortunately, had a foot injury or like an Achilles injury, but he's not. He'll be back in about another week and a half. That's why I wish I had about 3 more weeks of spring.
Right.
Because he needed it. But getting those established. And then the D-line, we still lost a lot of really good players over there, but still have a lot. McKinley's out for spring with a shoulder surgery, so it's getting a lot of those inside guys with Isaiah Rake, Shamar Turner, and at the end, to me, say those guys at end. There's a whole group of those guys. Diggs is having a phenomenal spring, in my opinion. I really like the way he's working. And then the depth behind those guys. So getting the line of scrimmage, to me, is very, very important because in this league, as I say, it's a grown man's league. Big guys are going to win. You got to be able to control both sides. Then allow your skill. And then the quarterbacks and our running backs. Amari Daniels is getting a lot of quality reps. We keep Anias back and forth because we're always going to. He's such a hybrid guy and finding ways to use him. Unfortunately, RJ Johnson, who we were looking forward to, is banged up a hammy and will probably be ready about time spring's over. And so, exactly, it always works out that way. And Crownover's done a good job. So, in that regard, the receivers are coming on. I think, Chase Lane's another guy in there when we put Anias in the slot, but Moose is in there. Now, Yul Keith has really came on, I thought, had a really, really good spring. Evan Stewart's jumping out there. You got Jalen. So those guys there. Secondary-wise, getting Miles Jones back. You're seeing Miles Jones back in the mix, which is really good. He played really good 2 years ago before he had the injury. Getting him back in the mix. Damani, I think, has had a really good spring. He really, the maturity in what he's done. AJ, which we played well, but he's been nicked all spring. He's had a hammy who we haven't pushed, so it's a little bit tough situation there. But Bryce Anderson's another young guy that's come in. Denver Harris is another young guy who's really come in. Those guys, I think, are getting a lot of playing time, can play real well. Chappelle is nicked up a little bit, not bad, but he was having a really good spring in that secondary part of it. So, and there's a couple other guys I'm sure you'll ask me about in a minute. I'm just going quick ones off the top of my head and what we're trying to do. But then the linebacker situation, like you say, Andre White probably having his best spring since he's been here, which he needs to. He's playing more consistent, playing physical. Coop is really running, making plays. Again, trying to get him to be consistent. But, man, Coop can run. He can cover. He's very athletic, plays in space. Chris Russell, T. Lee, Terry and Lee, it's big for those guys because they have to have good springs, and they're getting a lot of reps right now because you're going to need 4 or 5 linebackers in that group when you're playing with what's going on. Ish Harris is another youngster who's come in and done well. And then up front with the other guys, too, I keep saying Anthony Lucas is another young guy who I think has had an excellent spring. Young guy that we brought in and one of the signees who's long, athletic, can rush. And so in that regard. So, I mean, we're getting there. And, there's some other guys. Kicking game, I've been really – it's funny, in some of our practice earlier, our kickers were just a little erratic, but all of a sudden now in the scrimmages in the last about 2 weeks, they've really, really been consistent kicking the ball, and Nick's been really good at it, and Chode, of course, snapping it, and he and Jacob Grant, the 2 snappers, have done a good job. So we're getting there. We got a lot of work to do. I mean, it's funny, like I say, spring's just long enough to give you a taste where you want to – it's good. Now give me those last 2 or 3 weeks to really get it right, but then we have to end it, so it is what it is.
Well, I'm happy you brought up A-Chain and Bryce Foster because we're on the track team with them. What can we expect to see from them? Are they going to be in the spring game?
No, they will not be.
Okay.
They're going to stay out of it. And Bryce, because we want to get him some reps, and Chain did a few practices, but Bryce with his hands so much because it's blocking and throwing so much with his shot, they couldn't take the chance, and he's doing well there. I think it seems like he's doing really well there.
They are
better.
throwing and running like animals out there, and I'm curious because we have a track meet on that same day. I didn't know which they'd be competing in.
Now, it's funny. I've had that happen. I remember when Jameis won the starting job at Florida State. He came over and went 13 for 13 with 2 touchdowns, and then went over and went 6 for 8, hit a double, and closed the second game of a doubleheader in baseball. And that day he won the game. So it can be done. Jalen Ramsey used to do it. Jalen did it. He ran track and came over. But a Chain in the 100, and I think he's ran 10-1-4 and 10-1-2 the last 2 meets.
He ran, I think it may have been wind dated, but at Texas Relays was 10-0.
Did he really?
Insane, right.
And then he went 20.2 twice in the 2.
Which is tied for the school record.
Yeah, and he's tops in the country, I think, right now doing that. And I think Bryce is really getting into it. He's starting to throw better and better each and every week in what he's doing. So happy. And that was part of the recruitment. We knew they were 2-sport guys and going to be well, and I'm glad they contribute both places.
So that's another thing I wanted to get into. A lot of coaches at these big programs like A&M, they don't want to have to share their players with other sports. They think injuries and just time away from the field. What makes you think that it's okay, or what kind of encourages you to let other athletes do it?
I think, first of all, I was a 3-sport guy myself. I the old football, basketball, baseball, and I loved it and rolled and did it in college too a little bit. So I appreciate that. And I don't think you ever punish someone for being good in 2 things. Instead of just one.
Right.
But also, can they do it? If they're really contributing in most sports, that's the other part. If they're just participating in one but not really contributing, no, you got to stay with your main sport. But also, I think it's unfair to them. And I think it's good for them in the competition world. You're learning different competition. Anytime you're competing and there's a result and there's a winner, I think it enhances your abilities to train and focus, and I think it's a good thing.
Well, I'm thankful because they are great teammates, and we love having them over at track.
Yeah, having 2 guys that would come out of high school warranting a full ride just in track and allowing football to take that load, and us just get 2 full scholarship guys really helps the team.
That's what I say, and I think it's great for A&M. It helps A&M's brand. It builds us, and like I say, track gets freebies, and I say that freebies, but it's true. But we're here all to help together. That's why I say, we want all the sports to be good. And I've had them do basketball, I've had them do baseball, many baseball guys. So. And also, because track and baseball don't get to scholarships. You don't get to scholarship limits, and that really helps the sport, and we want to do that.
Right.
Because I know originally Connor Wyman was recruited for both sports, but then chose just to do baseball. Was that just a decision that he made?
Well, that's this semester. He wanted to get the offense down this semester, and then the next years he will do both. He's going to be a football, baseball guy, and he would be if he went in the draft this year, he would be a very high draft pick in baseball.
So speaking of him, I want to talk about him, Johnson, King. How are all the quarterbacks looking right now?
Good. They have their days. They've had their tough moments and their different things. We're going against a very good defense. But I thought the last scrimmage, I thought all played really well. We threw the ball extremely well, made good. But more importantly, not just throwing it well, but made good decisions, managed the game, doing things for the right reasons. That's like sometimes we can make a big play, but if it's for the wrong reason, it's never going to last. So what I'm interested in is your decision making, your eyes. What are you getting us in and out of the right plays? Are you getting us in and out of the right protections? Are you reading the coverage the right way to get to the matchup in which we want? And that's getting better and better. We still have to increase on that and get better. There's still a few little lapses here and there, but for the most part, all guys are very instinctive. That's a unique in that sometimes you'll have a thrower, sometimes you'll have a runner, and everybody thinks of Max is just a big thrower, but his feet are really good. He can run the football. The other 2 guys, Wegman and he can really run it. Connor's athletic. He can move. Haynes, we all know, can run, but they also can throw it really well. So, it's a great combination along with that group, and it's been very competitive.
Within last year, when Haynes did go down, we had Zach step in, and kind of the offense changed from the previous 3 years with Kellen Mond, we ran a lot of speed options, and once Zach came, more of a pocket passer, it kind of changed the offense. Is that something that y'all look into when you're deciding who's the best quarterback, or just the best quarterback?
No doubt. Here's at the end of the day, who moves a team the best? You can throw it, you can run it, you can do it. Who coherently works together and the guys want to play for? Who consistently moves the ball down the field? Who consistently makes plays? You can go to a combine and see a guy, he may throw it the best, but does he play the best? There's a lot of guys can throw a football. There's a lot of guys can run. But can they playing quarterbacks as a different animal? And then what we do around them, we got to feature what each of them does. And that's the thing, too. Would you like to have them all together and be very similar? Yes, but it's good to have another branch off that's a little bit different, because when you do, you can cause a defense problems. But also the key is, do they all have the ability to move the football? And that's the main thing we look at, and all three are doing a good job.
I guess just last week we got the reclassification of Overton being the number one player in the 2023 class, coming a year early. Can you kind of talk about kind of this trend of some of the top players graduating a year early and kind of getting their development?
Well, usually it's been a semester early, which I can understand. A year, that's a lot of school.
Right.
That's a lot of school at a young age that takes a lot of maturity to get. And he's not just getting those classes done. He is, if I'm not mistaken, he's a 4.0, 3.2. I'm not sure exactly. I don't know, but it's really, really high in his GPA. And what he's done and what he's going to be able to do for us, I'm excited about. But just for him to take the maturity to go do a whole year early at 16 years old, because I know at 16 years old, that's the last thing you'd ever got me to do is do double the work in which what I'm doing. But great player, has great potential, great young man. People don't realize, he was actually born here.
Really?
He was actually born in College Station. His dad was assistant athletic director here back in the day when he was a child. And he was born here. His brother was born in Dallas, so they were actually born in Texas. He has an older brother. And so it was like a homecoming. It really was. And it really was. It was very fortunate for us to be able to get a guy of Atlanta of that quality, which we're getting them all over right now. But that was a big get. When they told me they were going to do it, it's funny. I said, okay. I'm interested. Just when it gets later, I've heard that before, and they said, well, we can't get it done. All of a sudden they call and say, we're getting it done. So wow. That caught me off guard. So we had room and we were able to do it.
Wow. All right, so pivoting a little bit here, we're coming up on almost a year now of having the NCAA implement these new NIL rules. So from a coach's perspective, how have you seen NIL really impact college athletics in general?
Well, it's a huge factor in what's going on. And hopefully it'll be for the right reasons, doing the right things. You always worry that they're for the wrong reasons and people use them as a recruiting tool and those kind of things. But it's here to stay. That's going to be an impact on guys. And now the thing about in our state, we can't be involved or even know. They can't even bring something to us and say, Coach, does that make any sense? Which I think is very dangerous, because some of these guys don't have the background in business or situations to know, or sometimes the home situation isn't quite what it needs to be, or like I say, big deals like some of these guys are getting. It sounds like there's some deals across the country. Some guys are getting $1 million deals. My family, I would have been foreign to us. We'd had to have somebody to come help us when I was growing up. We'd never known that. But I think it is a big impact on guys. I think it's decision-making as far as what they perceive. And what worries me about it the most, does it become a distraction? Does it become about the NIL, not about playing ball, not about because I always say this, if you play great ball and they're going to get a bunch of NILs. Because if people want to give NILs to people who are very successful, just like in the NFL, who does all the commercials? The great players. So if you play great and do great, you tend to get more. But it is a big factor, and we're navigating. It's new on us each and every day. I joke, it's like Groundhog Day a little bit, because it's a constant change about how it affects guys, who can affect them, and they all can go get agents now, which is good because it helps representation. But what do they do? Does it take away from school? So right now it hasn't affected us that way, but it's going to be an interesting chore as we go down, and I think the NCAA's meeting right now, or coming up to try to get some kind of regulations or see if they can, and I don't know if they can. So we're all just trying to play it day by day. It's going to be a tough situation as far as navigating it. But I just wish they'd set the rules exactly so we could know how to navigate. Yeah,
from an athlete's perspective, I feel like it's very I don't know what's right here. I don't know what to do. The rules are very vague right now. So
they're vague, and you're at a young age. You don't expect those things now. It's kind of an unexpected. It's a great thing, and I like that. Again, I agree. Players and athletes, males, females, whatever, should get something. There is a recourse here that you should get something, and how much, I don't care, but how you do it, I think the process is what I think, as you're talking about, and I do too, what are the procedures? And each state has its own set of rules, and that's what you got to abide by.
Right.
Coach, kind of bouncing off that, going to the transfer portal, seeing it how it has become such a big topic of discussion. What is A&M's approach to the transfer portal, considering our recruiting success and the limited amount of spots that we have available?
Well, I mean, you got to go with need. Do you need immediate help? Can a young guy help? I think that's where you got to navigate. Now, that I can say this year we were so successful in the high school part of it that we didn't have to get into the transfer portal much. Max is the transfer we had, who came. He called and wanted to do it and do what we did, and it was great to have him because we needed depth at quarterback and we needed a really good quarterback. And this guy's been a proven winner in this league, so that gives us another great player on the team. But I think each individual situation, each individual year is a different animal in its own right. It depends on where your team needs are, what you have to have, and what's available. So I think but at the same time, it's open free agency. I mean, that's like the NFL. The pro guys would die for this. I mean, we have looser rules in the pros. I mean, if they had open free agency every year, those pro guys would be happy as heck. And so, I mean, I think there is room for transfers. The open part of this thing, it makes it very tough. It makes it tough to manage your roster. It really does. And when to recruit, how to recruit, who to recruit, because you guys can get in at so many different times. And recruiting, do you keep going after a high school guy? Do you wait? I mean, it's hard as a coach to manage your roster right now.
Right. So talking about recruiting, what do you like to see in an athlete in recruiting, and what is a red flag you see when you're recruiting an athlete?
Well, I think first for a guy, I want to say a high character guy. I want this. There's a reason I say when you meet guys. All right, there's a certain level of athletic talent you have to have, just like to run track at A&M. There's a certain amount of speed, athleticism, whether you're a thrower, runner, whatever it is that makes you qualify to be in that top 1%, 2% of athletes at what you do, whether it's a quarterback, alignment, or whatever. But then I get into personalities, and then I say how important is being a good person, a good student, and an athlete. How important are those three things to you? Because in college, if you're doing them all at a high level, it's about all the time you got. What are your priorities? How important? And I always say, well, people say you got to sacrifice to be a great student, to be a great athlete, and do all the things. I don't think you have to sacrifice. I think you have to have great priorities. Mm-hmm. Is it important enough to you to be able to do it? Then I think in your character. I mean, how much character, how you are as a person, who you are. You're a great teammate. You're a great person. And then I get into competitiveness. Toughness, and the relentlessness to pursue excellence. And I think that's very rare. And I think because we're told right now that we can, in our society, that you don't have to push, it's all okay. And I think it's a trend back on athletes. And I think young people today, because also you can multitask a million things, but you can't focus on one. Right. Because there's 100 things. That's what our society is doing right now. But I think character, I think competitiveness, and then intelligence. I think intelligence to me is what separates a lot of be able to process information, the situations you're in, and who you are to be able to have success.
I think that's what's so special about A&M. We don't just, and this is every sport, not just football, but we don't just seek out athletes who are really talented and that's it. You have to be well-rounded, and that's what it takes to be an Aggie.
Exactly right. And that's one of the best things that attracted me here. And I think being here, only enhances that. I've never, been in some tremendous places, but I think this school does it as well as anything with personal development, academic development, athletic development, and of course, the Aggie Network when you're done and being able to hit the resources that this place has.
Right.
Yeah, so just last week we beat Texas in baseball. It caused a big stir, and we always have had, even when we weren't in the same conference, a one-time game. With OU and Texas joining the SEC in the coming years, kind of how does that rivalry kind of instill in you? Have you seen it? What do you kind of see within that?
Well, it's going to be a rivalries are rivalries, man. That's what there's whether you call it hatred, competitiveness, whatever it is that you have toward the other guy that that's what a lot of people live on. And rivalries are great for sports. I think great for sports, great for schools, great for everything. And it only enhances the value of everything you're doing. And it's very important to a lot of people. And I'm looking forward to it. Like I say, we weren't in the same conference, and now we're getting back in. However, we've got to wait and see where that distribution goes as far as are we in the same league or how do we play every year or whatever. I'm assuming you would, especially being with the geographic, similarities being here and how they divide the league, which is something we still don't know. That's going to be the other part of that. Not only going to play Texas, but how does the league break down? Is it two, it'd be 18 divisions now, or is it the pods they talk about, or how are they going to – because the one thing that I say doesn't bother me but worries me, you want your kids to play everybody within a conference while they're here. And the way they do, and some of those things, it's going to make it very hard as you keep getting larger and larger in your divisions. Because in other sports, it's easy because you play more games. But in football, you play a limited number of games, and you want them to make sure you do it. So it's going to be very interesting. Not only, I'm sure they'll put us in Texas somewhere where we can play every year, but how do they do the rest of that league? That's got me just as intrigued.
Because we've played Florida in, I believe, 3 times, and we haven't even played Georgia at home in the SEC.
Yeah, well, the reason we play in Florida twice in the last 2 years, because the COVID year, they bumped the schedule. They took the games that would be this year's games and moved them up to create the 10-game schedule. We would have only played them once. But, that would have been this has been the first home game with Florida if it would have been under the normal circumstances, if I'm not mistaken. But you're right. We haven't played Georgia here since I've been here. We played Kentucky. We played South Carolina. Played Vandy here. Haven't played Missouri here either. Have we, or have we since before I came? Did they play Missouri here? Okay, they played Missouri. So Georgia would be the next one, whenever that is.
Do you kind of see the East and West in the SEC? The SEC West just seems like we all have heavy hitters. Every team is a juggernaut. And the SEC East kind of just has Georgia in a rotating door of like Florida.
Well, they're better than you think they are, and those other guys. But I'll say this: it varies. I remember when I first got into the SEC back in 1993. That time, Alabama had won the national championship in '92. But Auburn was coming off probation, where I went to coach. LSU was really down. Mississippi State were not killing it. The East was the team. That's when Georgia was rolling. Harrison Gerst. Florida was Garrison Hurst and that whole crew, Eric Zaire. Florida had Spurrier and Warfel, and they were winning big time. And Tennessee had Heath Schuler, and then went into the Mannings. The East was where they said was stronger than the West. Then it swung to the West. Then it goes back and forth a lot. But, it's funny how it trends right now. And I would say, in my opinion, the West is the best division, not only in the SEC. I think it's the best division in all college football.
Right. So I want to take it back a little bit to just more about you and your coaching career. Mm-hmm. What has been the biggest change you've seen in players since you first started coaching back in 1988?
That is a great question. I think everything back then was so, I don't say team-oriented, but it was more school and team-oriented. Now it's become, I think, the money in the game has forced it to, the team it's important, but you got to get to it in a different way. How do you got to do well, like I always say, the I in win, there's no I in team, but there is in win. It's your individual responsibility to be great for yourself and your team, and you got to approach it in a different perspective a little bit. And the teams that can build team and the accountability, dependability issues, and the reliability issues and doing those kind of things, because there's a lot more people with their hands involved in these players now. Like now you got an NIL guy, so you got an agent, and that agent generally is going to be your agent afterwards. That's how they set it up. But because the money of the game has become so big, the draft, you never set out bowl games. Just to go to a bowl game or things like that. And I understand why they don't. The individualism in it is growing more and more, but you can still build it into team, because there's still nothing like winning a championship. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And I think this is the last. In college, I try to tell them all the time, this is the last time, even if you're on some great teams in pro ball, that camaraderie of college is solely different than pro football. And I think the biggest thing is probably the individualism. And it's not bad individualism. It's just our society, the way society has evolved and everything now. I think it was much more team-oriented there, school-oriented. And the other thing is, I think everybody was much more regional back then. Mm-hmm. We're in such a global world now. You're getting people from all over the world, and trying to mix and match teams that are national or even like us, international. We have, and I know in track you do, and we do in football. We have international students playing on our team, and I think intertwining those and get them to buy into one is much more difficult than ever did, because, like for instance, when I coached at Auburn back in '93, majority of our guys came from Auburn, a little bit of Georgia, and you may have one guy, a couple guys out of Florida. They all grew up wanting to go to Auburn. Mm-hmm. Now it's who can help me develop, who can get me to the league, where can I win, where can I get name, image, likeness, where can I get whatever it is. And I think it's become more individual, and I think that's the biggest thing, but that's the way our world's become.
Coach, going back to Florida State, what's the most important thing you learned from Bobby Bowden?
A lot of things. That's why I'm sitting there thinking. But Coach Bowden and I were extremely tight. Have been since we were here. We talked a bunch when we were here, and people don't realize I played for his son and used to go stay at his house when I was learning to coach. I would, literally stay in a bedroom there and go watch him practice, or when they went to a bowl game, they took me with them. So I learned a lot of things. But to me, how he treated people and the genuineness and how he was, that's why he was such a great recruiter. I think he was honest. I think he was genuine, and he could make you feel like in 5 minutes, you felt like you knew him for 20 years. And it was as honest as the day is long. There was not anything precocious about him, or he wasn't trying to put on a show, or, he was who he was. He was very confident in who he was. And I think one of the things, he was a huge Christian. He was, big in FCA, the Bobby Bowden Award. And I think he showed me that be who you are. People follow people who are genuine, honest, and there's a lot of different ways to get to where you are. But in leadership, I think being genuine, being honest, and be truthful to who you are and what you are, and treat people in a great way and make them feel comfortable. I mean, and then, of course, people don't realize how competitive he was. I can get into the ball parts of it, but I think I go more personal and how genuine and honest he was, and I think that's why people loved him.
Right. So we're going to go into a quick little rapid-fire question section. We posted a forum on TexAgs asking what all of the viewers would want to ask you. Mm-hmm. So a quick few rapid-fire questions. What caliber rifle do you use on a South Texas Whitetail? Multiple people ask the same question.
Well, all right. Was 308, which is usually good. Anymore, I've gotten lazy. I don't want to track, so a 300 Win Mag.
Would you consider yourself a true Texan? I feel like you fit in so well with our setup here.
I feel so comfortable with it. I do. I said ever since I've came to Texas, I felt extremely comfortable.
I mean, I would assume you've been here your whole life. What is your beverage of choice?
Mm-hmm. I use that water. I don't drink a lot. If it is, it would. I'm more of a beer guy.
Who would win in a golf match, you or Saban?
He plays all the time, but I still wouldn't lose.
What is your favorite game in Kyle Field thus far?
Wow. Oh, we've had some dudes. I mean, you go 7 overtime, 74-72, the Florida game, the 41-38. Those two jump at me, I think, the most. And my first one, just because it was my first one and actually getting that feel of being an Aggie Land.
Right. All right. So our last segment is going to be, Jimbo, what were you thinking? So we have a few pictures that we're going to put up on this screen, and we're going to ask you what was going through your mind in this moment. Right. So our first one was after your national championship at FSU. What was going through your mind at this moment?
I mean, the joy, but how the sacrifices my family had, the time we were away, and also, my boys, how happy. You can see my son right there, just being happy as heck in the joy, but also the sacrifices my mom and dad made for me to be able to be on that stage. My mom was to the side over there. You couldn't see her, but it really was. It was just, how am I here? Why am I here? It was surreal. Am I really here? And the sacrifices, like I say, my mom was a teacher and she's still 85. She taught till she was 81 in school. And my dad was a coal miner, and the things he did to get me to that point, it really was. It wasn't joy. It was more like, wow, is this surreal? And the people who sacrificed for me to have that opportunity.
All right. Our next picture is the LSU 7 overtime game with Kellen and his knee down. What was going through your mind?
I was shocked, but at the time, when I saw it, I actually, for some reason, because of the snap I was looking, I saw it, and what was going on, I was trying to get to the official, that it was still a good play. I remember going.
I see a little air there.
There was, and it was there before he had the ball, and I saw it, and I was trying to get everything I could do to get to the official to make sure that was good.
So you were just like dead set. You knew it. You knew the call.
I knew it from the get. But it was something. My eyes just happened to be. That's where my eyes were at the present time.
Well, Coach knows what to look at. Our next picture is the Alabama game that we won during that last kick to win it.
I'm glad I didn't see the kick go like this, but I was happy for our players because it was a huge hurdle for us. I think psychologically to go into where we need to go as a team, and maybe Matt, we didn't finish this year off, but the psychological advantage of really getting over that hump for our players, and very happy because we had struggled there for a couple of weeks, and I was more happy for the players. It really was.
All right, and then our last one was that Gatorade bath after the Orange Bowl that you missed on. It actually got you a little bit.
They did barely, but I told them I could still have one good run in me, and I was not I love those baths. I mean, what they mean, but I hate them. I mean, they chill you from the top of your head to the tip of your toes. If I don't have to get one, I'm not. And that was a fun time.
We had so many people in the TexAgs forum asking what your 40 time would be after that picture.
I used to be able to run a good 40. I don't know anymore.
Do you remember it? What was your time?
I was consistently probably a 4.62 to a 4.6.
I bet you're a 4.4 now.
No. I'll tell you a funny story. When my son was 15 or 16, we were home in West Virginia, and he was in high school with my oldest son, Trey, and I said, you couldn't outrun me, blah, blah. I can run, So we get mad. We line up. I'm up in my mom's house out in West Virginia. We line up get on a flat piece of ground, and we're going to race. And we took off, and I went about 10 yards. and it cracked like a gun, and it went from all the way to the back of my knee all the way. I mean, I went down like somebody shot me. I mean, I collapsed, and he's laying there laughing at me. And the 2 weeks I'm up there visiting my mom, and luckily an old guy who I played basketball with was a physical therapist. I had to go to physical therapy for 2 straight weeks just to be able to. For 2 days I couldn't walk.
Just to race your son.
Just to race my son. I had to win. He was talking a bit, and he said, "I saw you go down." I said, "That means I win. I was ahead of you at that 10 yards." We were trying to run a 40.
Well, it's worth it. You made a core memory with your son. Well, we appreciate you so much for taking time out of your schedule. We hope that the Saturday spring game goes great. And thank you so much for being on the bench with us today on the Seniors on JV podcast.
It's great to be with y'all. Great show.
Have a great spring, and we hope to see you again in the fall.
Thank you.